Hey, shalom, shalom, mishpocha. This is Rabbi Yehudah ben Shomeyr coming at you with a fresh new video entitled Rahab the Harlot. For any of you who have grown up in church and have spent your life sitting in a pew listening to sermons, you've probably heard a couple about Rahab the Harlot and the faith of Rahab the Harlot, or the conversion of Rahab the Harlot, and Rahab the Harlot this and Rahab the Harlot that. I don't know about you, but I've always had a problem with Rahab the harlot. I've questioned, was Rahab really a harlot? And if she was, what does that say about the two spies that were sent to her house, or that made their way to her house within the wall? So I decided to do a little bit of digging in the scriptures. Come to find out that the word harlot in the Hebrew could also mean innkeeper. It could also mean innkeeper. And to me, I think there is a whole lot more evidence for Rahab being an innkeeper than Rahab being a harlot. I think Rahab the harlot is a very, very, very bad and poor mistranslation. So let me just give you some of the evidences why I think that Rahab was an innkeeper rather than a harlot. Okay, first of all, she had a place to live near the city gate within the wall. Now this wall supposedly was big enough and wide enough for two chariots with horses, a full team of horses, to race on the top of this wall. And I think that even back in those times, cities were built upon reputation. People didn't want to go into a city that was unsafe, or a city that had a bad reputation. And the city officials surely wouldn't let a harlot live inside the city walls next to the gate, where that's one of the first things that people see when they come to that city. They care about their reputation. And even back in ancient times, there were red light districts within cities where most of the prostitutes hung out. Prostitution is said to be the oldest profession in the world. Not only that, but they were your regular harlots, regular prostitutes, which made money for themselves. But there were also temple prostitutes, which they resided in pagan temples. They even had rooms and built their homes in these pagan temples. And we see clearly that the two spies didn't go to a pagan temple. And so they did not encounter a harlot, a pagan harlot, and I don't think that they would that there was a brothel inside this wall. I believe that Rahab was an innkeeper, and she made her living by being an innkeeper. Okay, so secondly, harlotry is a lucrative business. If a woman works really hard, they can make a lot of money for themselves through prostitution. And we see that Rahab had flax drying up on the top of the wall, up on the roof of her house within the wall. I don't know about you, but I've never heard of a prostitute having a hobby of gardening or making things out of flax, or have a secondary business on the side to try to make ends meet. If you're a harlot and you're good at what you do, you're going to make enough money to where you don't have to worry about a second income. Not only that, but if she was an innkeeper, it would make sense that she would be making things for the rooms and for the people that stayed at her inn. She would be making useful things out of flax, not only for the operation of the inn itself, but also maybe to take to market and sell on the side as an extra income. Because face it, every hotel and every motel has their slumps, has their their up years and their down years and their seasons where tourists come in. So there may have been some times of the year where there would have been more people coming to the inn, and other times where they weren't. And by the text, we kind of get the idea that this was one of those down seasons where a lot of tourists didn't come to the city, because it appears that the spies were the only residents of this inn which Rahab ran. And so maybe that's why she was drying flax upon the roof, because she's like, okay, this is a down season. in the tourist industry, in the innkeeper industry, so I've got to make my living somehow, so I'm going to dry this flax and sell it at market or make something out of it or what have you. So that was another evidence. Thirdly, she mentions that she has family, that she has parents, that she has relatives that she wants saved from this attack, from this destruction that the Israelites were going to bring upon this city. Now, a harlot, unless they are a pagan temple prostitute, their family would take no pride in her occupation. Matter of fact, most likely she would be disowned. She would be almost considered an outcast and untouchable, and her family would have nothing to do with her. So the fact that she talks about her family and wants her family saved shows me that she still had a good relationship, a working relationship with her family, and this goes to show, in my opinion, that she wasn't a harlot, that she was an innkeeper, because not only that, but usually families were pretty big back then. You know, you had umpteen kids, and they grew up, and if Rahab was an adult, her brothers and sisters would have families of their own and would have children, and her parents, etc. And for all them to fit in her house, to be saved during this attack, she must have had a pretty big house within that wall, which tells me she must have had a lot of rooms, which tells me she was more likely an innkeeper rather than a harlot. There is no other mention of any other person or women living in this wall with Rahab, so that shows me that it was an inn rather than a brothel. So, not only that, if she was a harlot, what does that say about the character of the two spies that stayed in her house? I don't know about you, but that's always bothered me. Why would two righteous, pious Hebrews from Israel come to spy out the land and, totally destroy that area, stay at a harlot's house? Wouldn't that endanger their mission? If Achan's sin that he kept secret from everyone just totally blew the battle of Ai, wouldn't the spies have blown the battle of Jericho if they were actually staying with a harlot? And I don't care how righteous and how pious you are, men are visually stimulated, and if they knew that Rahab was a harlot and would think, wow, she's been with a lot of men, that would have tempted them, and they would have most likely been tempted or seduced. You avoid all appearances of evil. If she was a harlot, these two spies would have nothing to do with her. So that's the evidences that I think that Rahab was an innkeeper rather than a harlot. This also calls into question the famous story about King Solomon. And how he had two supposed harlots come before him with one baby, both claiming that the baby is theirs. And so, you know the story where Solomon says, well, we can't really decide whose baby this is, so why don't we have these women just, split this baby in half with a sword and each take a piece? And the one who was the real mother said, no, let this lady have the baby. And Solomon said, well, we found out who the true woman was, because motherly instinct, would want the baby to survive, even if she couldn't have the baby herself. She would rather see the baby go to another person, another mother, as long as the baby lived. So give the baby to her. That's the real mother. Well, okay, if Solomon was a righteous king of Israel, one of the first duties as king is he would have to sit down on the throne with two Kohen, with two priests, and he would write himself out a copy of the Torah for himself, letter for letter, word for word. So he would already have a personal copy, a personal scroll of the Torah for himself. And copying it by hand, letter by letter, word by word, perfectly, he would have known the Torah very, very well. And if he was a king of Israel, his first duty in judging these two women would be to judge them for their harlotry. It wouldn't be, they have this problem with this child. If he knew that they were harlots, knew that they were prostitutes, he would have to judge them as prostitutes before he can even take on the case regarding the dispute over this child. And if there's harlots in Israel, what does the Torah say about that? If they were proven harlots, proven whores, they would have to be put to death. They would be expelled from the land. So this tells me that these two women that came before Solomon with the baby were not prostitutes. They were not whores. To me, I think it was poorly translated. Most likely they were innkeepers. They could have been sisters or could have been close relatives, and their husbands and themselves went into business together with this innkeeping business, and they let the women run this business while the men went off on business journeys. Maybe they had another business on the side, and they probably left for weeks or even months at a time. And so it appears, according to the text regarding this story, that there was no one in the house except for these two women. So most likely their husbands were on a journey. I'm assuming that they were married. I'm not assuming that this was a brothel. If it was a brothel, it would have mentioned that there were other women in the house doing business there. So I think that they too were innkeepers, and they were business partners together, and they could have been sisters. They could have been close relatives. If not, they were very, very close friends, and I believe they were married, and I believe that their husbands were out at this time, maybe on a journey, and they were staying together in the inn, and nobody else was in the inn. Of course, this may have been one of those down seasons for tourism, and they were staying together with their children, and unfortunately one rolled over on their child, suffocated it and killed it, and took it in the night and claimed it as her own. And we know the story that we know today, that we read in the scriptures regarding Solomon and his decision. This is what made Solomon famous for his wisdom. So this is evidence, in my opinion, that even these women that came before Solomon were innkeepers and not harlots. Because again, bottom line, if they were harlots, they would have to, and they were known harlots, proven harlots, Solomon would have to judge them on the fact of their profession before he could even take on the case that they came before him with the women. And if these women were harlots, why would they do something so stupid and go to the king of all Israel, who could have them put to death for their business of harlotry? Why would they even go? That would be like a person on a wanted poster that was a known serial killer or rapist walking into a police station and saying, "Hey, somebody jacked my car." Do you think they would care about this guy's car? No, they would arrest him immediately because he's a known serial killer or a known rapist. They wouldn't give a darn about his car. Same with Solomon. He wouldn't give a darn about this issue with the baby, whose baby it is. He would say, "Hey, you guys are harlots. You're known harlots. You came to me. Basically, this is almost like you turning yourselves in. I'm going to have to judge regarding your practice of whoredom. It's forbidden in Torah, and this is what the Torah says about it, so this is my judgment." But he didn't do that. He judged the case on the child, which to me proves that they were innkeepers and not harlots. So I think it's very, very important that when we read the scripture, we do our best to understand what the original language says, whether it be Greek or Hebrew or what have you. I would highly recommend Spiro Zodhiates' the Hebrew-Greek Keyword Study Bible. I don't always agree with his commentary or his notes, but he highlights keywords that is in conjunction with the Strong's Concordance numbering system and lexicon system, so you could easily look up words, keywords, and get a deeper meaning of the scriptures as you read them. So I would highly recommend that particular Bible it's a good study Bible. I really enjoy mine. So anyways, this is my whole spiel about Rahab the harlot. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you later. Shalom and Shavua Tov. Bye-bye.